Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at Photoshop to see what we can do inside of there to use the tools to help us build our maps for our level design documents. We're going to start off by creating a new file. For a number of reasons, we're going to want to create a file that has a multiple of 100 for each of its dimensions. I'm just going to use 1000 by 1000 for our default. When I create that, you'll notice that I already have a grid in place here. For you to see the grid, you can press Control apostrophe or go to View, Show, Grid, and you can turn that grid on and off. By default, your grid's probably not going to line up perfectly like this one does. For us to modify the grid that's being used in Photoshop, we're going to go to Edit Preferences or Control K, and then choose Guides, Grid, and Slices. That'll bring up this menu here. If I change this to every 100 pixels with one subsection, you'll notice that there are at our 1000 by 1000 grid, I have 10 across and 10 up and down. So if I want to make this a little bit more gradual, that I could make edits a bit more comfortably with to say I can modify smaller details, then I might go with a 50 grid and two subsections, or maybe even a little bit smaller, let's say a 40 grid with two subsections. That'll give us the opportunity to still be on the 100 scale at 1000, and will give me some detail that I can work with. Uh, this is a great grid, and it's helpful because if I go to do things like use the pen tool, it will snap to the grid. If I'm off the grid, it'll jump to the nearest grid line, which is helpful and handy. Unless I'm smack dab in the middle, um, it should jump to it. And you can control whether or not you're doing that by using snap to and then making sure the grid is selected. So if that's going to help me build the environment, that's great. But the problem is when the map gets saved out as an image, it's going to look like this with no grid on it. And that's not very helpful to a designer to know how big the space is. So for us to be able to use this effectively, we have to be able to draw our own grid onto this surface. So for us to do that, I'm going to step into a new file. We're going to create a new file that is at a scale of 100 by 100. And I'm going to make the background transparent just to make sure that we're only getting the grid lines. I'm going to zoom in real quick to this, and I'm going to press Control A to select all of the pixels. So you can see the little marching ants on the outside of the image here. I'm going to go up to Edit and say Stroke, and then I'm going to use 2 pixels on the inside. So the selection is here at the edge. If I said center, it would split 1 pixel on this side, 1 pixel on this side, and if I said on the outside, it would put everything outside the canvas. So 2 pixels on the inside is going to give me this line. You can see these small grids. This is actually the pixel grid that's showing me exactly 1 pixel there. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to change my marquee over here to highlight everything but the left and top 2 pixel rows, and I'm going to clear those out. So my entire image is basically just this left column and this top column, the top row. I'm going to take this, and I don't even need to save the file, and just say define pattern, and I'm going to call this grid 100. So with that defined, I don't need this file anymore. Nope, don't need it. And then I will come over to my larger document, and I'm going to create a fill layer, and I'm going to choose pattern from the top here. It'll default give me these nice leaves, but I'm going to change those to the pattern that we just created. You'll see here, grid 100. And so grid 100 gives us our 10 across by 10 up and down. But this doesn't align well to our grid that we have already built in, which, if you recall, was set at a scale of 40. Being set at a scale of 40, I can just take the scale of this grid and change that to 40, and that will align with the major grid lines that I have here. So if I turn off the grid, you'll see that the major grid lines align with the scale that I have here. But if I turn this off, you'll notice that the minor grid lines don't have a reference point. So what I can do is double click on this and change the scale to half of that to give me my minor grid lines. And now I have a grid that exists on its own outside of Photoshop's helper grid. Now, I could use this to snap to, but it's not going to be as precise as the grid snapping from within Photoshop. So I have this. I probably want to drop its opacity down so it's not so aggressive in terms of readability, maybe 40%. I'll make it plenty readable, and then I'm just going to lock that layer, or actually I'm going to change it to multiply first, so that it'll add on top of whatever's there without destroying the details. And then if I had a white background, this would help me to put that on top of anything without disrupting it. And then I'm just going to lock that layer. I'm going to leave that at the very top so it'll go on top of everything we have. And I'm going to hide that and bring our Photoshop grid back. So I've got my problem solved where now if I can just recall to enable that when I'm all done, I'll have a grid on top of my map. So with that in play, I can now consider how am I going to draw the details of my map. If I started to use a brush, it might be a little sloppy. If I pick the right details for the size of the brush and things like that, if I come up here and get the size to be just right and I can draw the edge lines how I want, I run into an issue where editing it becomes fairly problematic. So a better way for us to draw the map is to use the pen tool or the shape tool. So with the pen tool, if you can manually get into the space, we can look at having no fill and stroke, making sure this is set to shape and not path. And then I can use whatever size I want. Typically, it's advised to use uh, a stroke size that matches your wall size. So if this was 40 pixels across and 20 pixels wide, let's say I want my walls to be, I want each of these grid units to be 100 in game. So if I want the walls to be 100, then I can just set my stroke to 20. Oh, that's 204. 20, and then just make sure that my line is aligned to the outside of my shape. This is showing on the inside, but that'll flip when I close the shape. So I can make this, whatever size and shape I want. If I wanted to get a few rough details in here. All right, and then I can take this and flip it to the outside. And so now these are exactly where the walls will be, and this interior space is designed to spec of how large I want it to be. So that's really handy. I can also build out a space using shapes. So if I use these rectangle tools and I say I know how big the shape is going to be, if each one of these small squares is 100, right, then I can say this is 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200 by 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 1,600. So 1,200 by 1,600, if that's the right dimension, we'll make it 1,200 by, should be 1,200 by 1,200 there. So at 1,200 by 1,200, that's the right room size. I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to duplicate it over here, and we're going to add a corridor between them by adding another shape. So I'll draw the shape this way. I'll make sure the shape aligns correctly to the edge. And then I'm just going to select all three of these shapes. So this shape, this one, and this one. And what I'm going to do is go up to Layer and say Combine Shapes, Unite Shapes. And suddenly I have my two rooms connected by a corridor with no walls between them, and I can draw whatever details I need on top of those. And so I can name these now. And I have the specific spaces that these are going to exist in, and so I can start to add content to the level, draw in furniture and things like that. I can use the brush to then go in and paint smaller details inside of these areas here. So if I wanted to, for instance, draw furniture, this is maybe not to the right scale, but implying like a couch maybe or something like that. I can take that layer and then position the object wherever I need it. And I can start to draw in details into the map. And you'll notice that as I do this, the details, the line weights start to really matter. If the wall is this thick and the couch is this thick, I need to make sure that the furniture looks different than static elements that are things like the walls. If I bring my grid back, you'll notice the grid is kind of everywhere, even though I only really need it in the spaces that are relevant to the map. So for me to rectify that, if I have this is just my couch layer. Appropriately naming all the things as you go, ideally. But if I have the grid, I can force it into the area that is just relevant to the play space by doing a control click on the areas where the player is meant to go. So I did a control shift click. You'll notice if I do a control click, it'll grab the marching ants around the selection for whatever that shape is. You can see those here. And a control shift will add to that, and it'll just grab the shape there. And then I can come up to the mask for this grid, and I can do a control backspace, which will fill it with the background color to give me contrast. And when I deselect this, I can just select that whole layer and I've inverted what I wanted, so I just do Control I to invert that layer, and you'll notice I have the grid now only inside of the playable space. It helps to have the grid outside the playable space for measurement's sake. Like if I wanted to see what the angle of this wall was, measuring it on the inside, I may not as easily want to measure this side as I would this top side for whatever reason you have. So I can just extend the grid outside of the space. If I wanted to, I could paint right into the mask with black and white. So if I took the brush and we increase the size of the brush a little bit, I'm painting with white. So as I paint out here, you can see the grid get brought back in. Or if I wanted something a little bit more concrete, I can Control click on the mask, and then I can come up to select and say modify and expand, and we'll go a specific 50 units, and so 50 pixels out, and then I can just Alt backspace to get that in there. And then now I have the grid extended beyond the playable space, so I can get a better view of the size of the space. In addition to this, the shape tools can be used pretty handily to build the frames for the content that you're going to be making as well. So if I wanted to get back into the level, then I can build my legend in here. I can make the shape. I can label it using the T key and just make sure that's framed at an appropriate size on screen. Thinking of readability, there's a 2x distance rule, which basically says that if your media is to be viewed appropriately, it should be readable when the user is 2 times the distance from the media source as the size of the media source. So imagine you're looking at a screen, so the diagonal of the screen times 2 is how far away from the screen you should be for the ideal viewing distance. Thinking about this being in a document, think about how big this is as a sheet of paper. At twice the distance from that size of sheet of paper, can you read the text? And that should be what you should consider appropriate size for the text here. If you wanted to create an icon to use on the legend, of course, we can always go back and do a new 100 by 100 grid here. Let's say I wanted to create an icon. For example, you're going to be placing bombs on the map, something to that effect. So I'm going to just do a quick grid layout. This will give me the center, and then I'm going to create some custom shapes that will allow me to, let's see, we'll do 5, 4 by 4. All right, so I guess we could go a little bit higher. All right, so if I have this layout that I can use for my shapes, I'm gonna take an ellipse tool. We'll grow it. Ooh, not that big. We'll do this, and I'll just break into the shape a little bit. I'll take the pen tool. We'll add some lines here, and then I'll grab that shape up. We can break these. There. It's probably a cleaner way to go about this. If I take this tool here, remove that line, then I can just take these lines down, move this asset up a little bit. Now this is riveting content here, but I promise that the point that's being made is useful. So if I take this line, hopefully, and then I add the bomb shape to it, and then we, so if I have this bomb shape, I can then take these and say to define a custom shape. And so if I do custom shape, I have my bomb. And now when I come over here, if I choose custom shape down over here, I get my bomb, and I can place it on the legend. And once I get that on the legend in the way that I want, I can then go take that and not auto select. I can go place that wherever I need in the map for specific details, and it's exactly the same. So with that bomb selected, I want to make sure that I also get the appropriate text in place to address it. So right, there's no confusing what that is, but to help label it, bomb, is it a bomb pickup or is it a bomb site? This will allow me to replicate that pretty consistently. So the tools inside of Photoshop will allow you to build out your content pretty quickly. Another consideration that you want to have is being able to place your critical path inside of the level. So if the player starts over here and ends up over here, how do you draw that consistently on the map? So a dotted line is the simplest way to do that. You can take the pen tool again. Let's make a different color for the pen tool, and then rather than drawing a straight line, we're going to draw a dashed line. And then maybe the player has a little run around and then comes back, right? So the dash line will show where the player goes. It might be a little heavy-handed for what you're after. You might decide you want something that's a little different, using dashed lines to show the path of a moving platform. So then let's go modify this dashed line to be more unique. So this is on the center, which is probably good for that. Let's make this a longer line with a small gap, a medium line, a small gap, and then it'll return to the long line. So now it'll look like the path, and let's say you maybe want to even spice this up a little bit more, and you want to add an arrow intermittently along the path here. This is still a path, so this shape, I can have that path there. If I have a brush that has a particular shape that has like arrows on it, then I can add that brush to this path. So let's hide these real quick. And I'm going to just draw onto this a really ugly arrow. If I use my brush tool, let's grab the simplest of brushes, the hard edge brush, and then we'll just bring that down to a size that's appropriate for our purposes. I'm going to draw this relatively close to the center. Set 3 up. There you go. Okay, so I have a little arrow here. I'm going to save that under Edit as a brush preset. We'll just call it right chevron. And now I have this brush, which will create an arrow along the way. And so if I go to a blank layer, that's probably a little big for what I want. So I'll go to my brush settings. I will drop the size down. And let's increase the spacing a little bit. And then I can take that brush and change its dynamics so that the angle is based off of the direction. So now it'll point in the direction that I'm moving. I can come back over to my shape, and I have my path. Select my path. We'll go to the pen tool for this. You can right click. Let's see if I have the path selected. And I'm on a layer. See the path. I may need to duplicate the path to get it there. But let's use the pen tool for the sake of argument here. So if I have the pen tool, we'll draw this shape, and then I should be able to go back to the path. So if the path is here, I can right click and say stroke path if I'm on a layer that will take the path. And I can get my little arrow brushes all along there. Assuming I had a more relevant arrow, the brush or the pen tool will allow that to follow that guide as well. So it'll show the directionality of that. So you can build your own custom path, and you can use a dual brush if you wanted to get really fancy with it. Just depends on what level of commitment you want to give to your Photoshop time. But this gives you the idea of how to build icons, how to build a critical path, how to draw your walls, floors, ceilings, things like that, how to get your grid in place. These are the key components of building your map for level design. So hopefully this gets you started on what you need. And if you have future questions, just comment and I will try and take care of that for you. I hope this inspires you to get done what you need to get done. Go out there and keep building.